Hi guys, Mimi G here with another sew along of my latest Summer Simplicity pattern 8915. It's a really wonderful knit maxi dress with 2 bodice variations. I'm going to show you how to sew both. Let's get started. Okay guys, we're going to work on our dress. We're going to be doing view B. So let's go over the pieces that you're going to need. You're going to need to cut out pattern piece number 8, which is the front. You're going to cut one on the fold. Now I want to point out you need to tape together 8A to pattern piece 8, and you just want to match your symbols. Then you're going to cut pattern piece number 9, which is the front facing. You're also cutting one on the fold. You're going to cut pattern piece number 11, which is our bodice back, and you're going to cut 4. You're going to cut pattern piece number 3, which is the back. You're going to cut 2. And you're going to cut pattern piece number 5, which is the lower back of our dress, and you're going to cut 1 on the fold. Now pattern piece 10, 13, and 14 are elastic guides. So cut a piece of elastic the length of the paper pattern. Now once you have everything cut, we can start sewing. All right guys, we're going to start with our front and our front facing, and then your 2 elastics for piece number 10. So I've already cut my elastic using my elastic guide. So I'm going to set these aside for just a sec. Now what I want you to do is I want you to pin and sew this dart that you see. So you're going to bring your cut edges together, right sides facing. And you're going to pin. And you're going to sew from your marking and stop at your dot the way you see here. So you're going to be creating a dart, and then I want you to press your seam open. Okay, so now that you have both of your darts sewn, you're going to go ahead and place your facing, right side facing on your dress. And we're going to align that seam and pin. And then make sure to align your notches and pin. Okay, now head over to the sewing machine and you're just going to stitch across using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Now with your facing still facing up towards you, you're going to grab your elastics, and you should have 2 markings on either side of your dart, 2 dots that you marked. You're going to go ahead and pin your elastic, and then you're going to pin again. And you're going to do the same thing on the other side. You're pinning only in your seam allowance. Now you're going to go to the sewing machine and you're going to zigzag stitch your elastic onto your seam allowance. Okay, using a wide zigzag stitch, you're going to gently pull on your elastic and stitch. You're going to stitch down the other side the same way. Okay, we're going to open up the stitches that we created where our dart is. That's going to create a channel for us to put our tie through. So I'm going to actually unpick just a couple of stitches because I look like I went over when I stitched. And I need to keep that space in between those 2 dots open. Okay, great. Now we're going to turn this to the right side. And I want you to give it a press. So take it to your ironing table and just press this seam. Okay, so I have pinned together my facing and the front of my dress just under my dart to make sure that my seam is aligned here and at my dot. So what we're going to do is we're going to create the channels for our tie to go through. So what you're going to do is 3/8 of an inch from that center seam, you're going to stitch down. Then you're going to stitch on the other side of that all the way up. Okay, so I'm going to start at the bottom where my dot is. I'm going to work my way up and then down the other side. I'm going to back stitch at the beginning. Okay, and now I'm going to stitch down the center of both following my seam. You should now have 3 rows of stitching. Okay, we're going to set this aside for just a sec. And I want you to grab your 4 back pieces. Okay, so what you're going to do is with right sides facing, we're going to stitch across the top and across the bottom. I'm going to pin in place. Now I want you to go to the sewing machine. You're going to pin both sides the same way, and you're going to stitch across the top and across the bottom using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, guys, I turned my back pieces right side out and I've given them a good press. Now I want you to note that one side is wider and has a notch. So the shorter unnotched edge is the one that we're going to turn under to create the casing for the back of our tie. So what you're going to do is you're going to press and stitch 1/4 of an inch on the edge, and then we're going to turn it again 3/4 of an inch and top stitch. Okay, so I'm going to stitch down my 1/4 inch turn. And now I'm going to turn. I'm going to fold over 3/4 of an inch and stitch close to the edge. You're going to do the same thing to the other side. Okay, now that we have our sides sewn and we've created our casing, we're going to go ahead and attach it to our dress. So I want you to open out the facing part. And you're going to align your notch. I want you to pin it in place. You should have a dot where it's going to end, so it should meet up. And now what you're going to do is you're going to fold your facing over and then repin all layers. Now you're just going to stitch using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. You're going to do the same thing on the other side. Okay, now that we have our back attached in between our facing and our dress, we can go and start putting together the lower portion of the dress. So you're going to grab the back part of the skirt, and you should have 3 notches to indicate that this is the center back. So with right sides facing, we're going to go ahead and pin. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and stitch using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Okay, once you have it pinned in place, go ahead and grab your elastic because we're going to use it while we're at the machine. So what we're going to do is we're going to stitch this using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Then we're going to go back and we're going to place our elastic between our dots at a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, and we're going to stitch it down. Okay, so I'm going to back stitch the beginning and at the end. Okay, now grab your elastic and you're going to stitch it at the 5/8 of an inch seam, and you're going to pull as you stitch. Okay, once you have your elastic for the center back, you're gonna turn this over, and at the top, we're gonna create a casing for the waist elastic. So you're gonna turn and press 5/8 of an inch, and then we're going to stitch 3/8 of an inch from the folded edge. Okay, once you've created your casing, you're gonna go ahead, grab the last piece of elastic that you should have, and using a safety pin, you're just gonna put it through the casing. Okay, I'm gonna pin this end because I don't want it to go inside the casing. I need to stitch it down, so I'm gonna pin it in place. Okay, now head to the sewing machine. You're just gonna tack down the elastic on both ends to make sure that it's stable. Okay, now that I have my elastic in place, we're gonna go ahead and attach the bottom portion of our skirt. So with right sides facing, we're gonna go ahead and first match our notches and pin in place. Okay, once you have it pinned, you're gonna take it over to your sewing machine and you're just gonna stitch using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, once you've attached the skirt to the flare, right, our fishtail, our seam is pressed, and now we can go ahead and attach this back to the front of our dress. So I have the front of my dress, right side's facing up towards me, and my back, right side's facing. And I'm going to pin in the exact place where my marking is, which is just below where we attached the back. And I'm going to pin. And then you're going to continue pinning down your side, joining front to back. Once you're done with this side, you're going to do the same exact thing to the other side. Okay guys, now that we've attached the sides together, the last thing we need to do is create our ties and finish the hem. So set your dress aside for just a sec. Okay, so you have 2 ties. You're gonna do the same thing to each one. You're gonna fold it in half. You're gonna stitch across the short end using 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. And then along the long end, you're also going to stitch using 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, I went ahead and used my serger to sew this together because my serger creates a super stretchy stitch. Now, if you don't have a serger, you can use your zigzag stitch. In case you're wondering, whenever I'm stitching with knits, anything that is vertical, any of my vertical seams, I use a straight stitch. But if I'm sewing anything that has a horizontal seam line, then I use a very narrow zigzag stitch. Now I'm going to turn this right side out. So we've closed off one end. Okay, once you've turned both of your ties to the right side, we can go ahead and sift them through our casing. Okay, so on the end that we did not close, I'm going to take my safety pin and then going in through the top, because remember we left that little opening, we're going to sift it through one of the channels that we created. And you're going to grab that safety pin from in between your facing and your dress. You're going to remove the safety pin. You're going to pin this in place because you're going to have to baste it, right? You need to tack that down so it doesn't come undone. So I'm going to hold it in place and pin. Now I'm going to take my other tie and I'm going to do the same thing. Hold it in place. And pin. Now you're gonna go to the sewing machine. You're just gonna tack across both ends to make sure that your ties are secure. Okay, once we have it secured, you can pull on your ties as much as you want. If you want a lot of gather on the top or you just want a little bit of gathering on the top, it really just depends on you. And then on the back, we're gonna crisscross. And you're gonna use your safety pin again. And you're gonna go in through the back casing. Now the only thing left for you to do is to finish the hem of your skirt, and you, my friends, are all done. All right, guys, I hope you've enjoyed this sew along. Please make sure and follow me on Instagram if you're not following already, @MimiGStyle, and make sure and tag me in all of your amazing creations. Until next time, peace.